Okay, great. Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here this evening today to be part of this. It's the launch of something really special, and in honor of a very special man who was my dear friend and a mentor to me, and a friend and a mentor to so many people. Eric Samson of blessed memory, and Eric was a man of tremendous humility, and he never liked fanfare about himself, certainly. And he wanted things to do good things and to make the world into a better place. And so I think what is so special about the way that his family have marked this first yahrzeit, and indeed the whole year since his passing has been all about continuing his legacy and making the world into a better place through his legacy. And I think that and through the values that he lived by. And so to me, the amazing part of who he was is that it continues, and the values which he instilled in his children and grandchildren, they continue to live by and attribute to him. And the fact that the continuation of the yahrzeit service, which was held yesterday, is about continuing to learn all about values, Jewish values, because Pirkei Avot is really the book of Jewish values. It is about how to live as a mensch, how to be a mensch, how to be a good person, how to make the world into a better place, how to reach out to other people. It's all about those kind of values, that the kind of values that Eric lived with and that his family continues to live with. So these 18 shiurim for the first 18 Mishnahs of Pirkei Avot are dedicated in Eric's memory. And these shiurim, and tonight is the first. It's going to be a series of shiurim delivered by 18 different rabbis from all around the world, people with the connection to Eric, to the family, sharing the wisdom and the values of Pirkei Avot. And that is something so special. Pirkei Avot is made up of a number of chapters. This is chapter 1, and looking at the first first chapter of the 6 chapters, and there are 18 Mishnahs in the first chapter. And so these are shiurim which are all going to be on these 18 Mishnahs. And so I'm so honored to participate. Eric was such a dear friend and a mentor to me and to so many others. And he lived these values of Pirkei Avot in the way that he did. In a sense, his life was a Pirkei Avot shiur. Tonight we're going to learn Pirkei Avot, but his life was a life of a Pirkei Avot shiur, because he lived the values of Pirkei Avot, and that's why this is so special to be able to learn Pirkei Avot in his honor. And I'm honored to start the very first Mishnah of Pirkei Avot. The Mishnah reads. I'll if you have a copy of it in front of you, you can follow. But if you don't worry. I'll just share with you what it says. I'll read it and translate it as I go, because Pirkei Avot is all about tradition. It says, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai u'mesara li Yoshua. Moses received the Torah from God at Mount Sinai, and he gave it to Joshua, v'Yoshua l'Zakanim, and Joshua gave it to the elders, u'Zakanim l'Neviim, and the elders gave it to the prophets, u'Neviim masru l'Anshei Knesset HaGedolah, and the prophets gave it to the men of the Great Assembly. And so Pirkei Avot begins with tradition, with the handing down from generation to generation, and it's that sense of ledor vador, from moving from one generation to the next, that it opens with, because that is who we are as Jews. When we think about who we are our values. And where do those values come from? They come from Sinai, where Hashem gave them to us for all times, and then he entrusted each generation to pass it on to the next generation. And so, in a sense, and this is what Rabbi Vadia Bartanura, one of the great commentators on Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Vadia came from the city of Bartanura in Italy, was one of the great sages, and he is one of the master commentators on the Mishnah. And he says, why is it that out of all of the tractates, Pirkei Avot begins with listing the chain of transmission is because many of the values that we learn about in Pirkei Avot are actually universal values. And everybody, there are values that you may find in the other writings and other cultures. But what we acknowledge when we start Pirkei Avot of this tradition is that all of the values of Pirkei Avot actually came from Mount Sinai, from when God gave us the Torah and when it was handed down from generation to generation. So it begins by framing that Jewish values and Jewish wisdom began at Mount Sinai, and we connect ourselves to it. But what's also very interesting in those opening lines of Pirkei Avot is the fact that each generation that is listed in that opening Mishnah had different challenges. It starts off that the Torah was given to Moses and he gave it to Joshua, and Joshua gave it to the elders. Each one of those had a different challenge at a different time. Moses was the one who led the Jewish people out of Egypt, as we're reading about in the parashas that we're involved in at the moment, the portion of the week, and he led the people through times of tremendous miracles. Joshua led the people into the land of Israel. He had to establish the very first Jewish state in history. He had to establish an army. He had to establish governing structures, and he also had this enormous challenge of being the person who had to step into the shoes of Moses. Can you imagine being the successor to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses? And so he had so much which was on his shoulders, and so much to do, and so much to contend with. So he had a whole set of different challenges. And then the elders who took over from him lived in a time of a lot of turbulence. There were a lot of wars. A lot of nations surrounding Israel launched wars against them, and they had to lead the people. There was a lot of fragmentation. There was a lot of disunity within the people. So it was a very difficult challenge. And they then gave it over to the prophets. The prophets were people who were the moral voice in the society. They were the ones who in the society, they spoke out when there were situations of injustice. They spoke truth to power to the kings. So they had another whole set of challenges. So if you look at each step of the generations here, each one of them had a different set of challenges. And each generation of Jews does have a different set of challenges and opportunities. The constant of Jewish history, everything changes in Jewish history. Where we come from, what countries we happen to be living in, whether there is Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel or there's not. There have been so many different stages of our history with so many different challenges. The constant that has held it all together has been the Torah, which God gave us at Mount Sinai, giving us our values and holding us together. Of course, when we look at the times in which we live today, we live in times of tremendous blessing. I mean, we live in a time where we have a Jewish state. God has blessed the Jewish people with a Jewish state, a sovereign state in the land of Israel. That is a tremendous gift. We also, many Jews in the world live in democracies where there's freedom and human rights and protection of what it is to be a Jew. In South Africa, in America, all over the world, Jews have unprecedented rights and protection of those rights. And so we live in times of tremendous blessing. I mean, the blessing of a Jewish state in the land of Israel is a blessing which so many generations of Jews before us wanted. We also live in a time of tremendous challenge of rising anti-Semitism, challenge of military threats and political threats to Israel. We also live in a time of rising assimilation as well. And so every generation has to confront the challenges and maximize the opportunities unique to it. But yet what we have as our map, as our blueprint that holds it all together is the Torah itself, which a Mishnah later on in Pirkei Avot says was actually the instrument, the tool that God used to create the world. As the Midrash says, God looked into the Torah and he created the world. It is our blueprint, and it holds us all together. And so, on a very deep level, what we have in as Jews today is unique challenges and opportunities, and we need to be rooted in our values maximize those challenges and those opportunities. And so that's where Pirkei Avot starts. It starts in a certain sense with the transmission from one generation to the next. It starts with the idea of the eternity of Jewish values. But even though our values are eternal, nevertheless, our values are eternal, and yet the circumstances are constantly changing. So we have to grapple with new and the old, applying the old to the new, the ancient to the modern, and that's where the tension of Jewish life comes in. So that's the opening part of the Mishnah. But then it gives us something which is very crucial and actually helps us address some of the great challenges that we are going through at the moment in the world, and that is the challenge when it says that the prophets gave it to the men of the great assembly. Hem amru shloshet barim. They said three things. This is the next part of the Mishnah. They said three things. Hevu metunim bedin, be patient in judgment. V'hamidu talmidim harbe, and establish many students. V'asiu siag l'Torah, and make a fence around the Torah. So they gave advice. Now, what generation did they live in? What were the circumstances that they lived in? They actually, the leaders of the Great Assembly, were lived in times that are actually very similar to the times that we live in, and so there's a tremendous amount we can learn from the wisdom that they give, because these great leaders of the Great Assembly, they remember that when after Joshua conquered the land of Israel, we were in the land, and then King Solomon built the temple. Where we see that right there, but on the it was the location of the Temple Mount. So King Solomon built the temple, and that eventually was the land of Israel was invaded by the Babylonian Empire and by Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, who destroyed and burnt the temple to the ground and exiled the people. And then 70 years later, a decree was issued by the head of the Persian Empire that had taken over from the Babylonians, a king by the name of Koresh, and he said that the Jews could go back to Israel. Very similar to our times, with a Balfour Declaration, a League of Nations Declaration, a United Nations Declaration. There was a declaration on the part of the nations of the world to return to Israel, and they did. People started coming back to Israel, but it was a time as they returned where there was tremendous struggle in being able to rebuild the state of Israel all the way back in those years, which takes us back more than 2,500 years, all the way back to the rebuilding of the Second Temple and the reestablishment of the Jewish state. And it was a time also of a lot of assimilation, of intermarriage. It was a time of ignorance in the Jewish world. And this incredible group of leaders called the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, the people of the Great Assembly, they had to come to address this, and they came with a threefold solution. This is how the Maharal explains in the second part of the Mishnah. They came with a three-pronged approach to how to address the challenges of their time. So when it says here, be patient in judgment, v'amidu talmidim harbe, establish many students, v'asiu siag l'Torah, and make a fence around the Torah, they were giving direction for their generation, which applies equally today. If we're looking for a blueprint for Jewish life today, we could take it out of these three principles. Principle number one, hevu mitzunim bedin, be patient in judgment, meaning any Jewish society needs to be based on justice, on justice and fairness and procedures and a just society. So that's the first principle. The second principle is, in order for Jewish society to thrive, ha'amidu talmidim harbe, you need to have lots of Torah learning. You need Jewish day schools. You need yeshivas. You need Torah learning to take place. And Jewish education is such an important value. It's also, as we know, a tremendous value that Eric lived by, and amongst the many causes that he supported, Jewish education, the Jewish day school movement in South Africa, Jewish day schools, and supporting Jewish learning, Torah learning, is something that was so passionate to him. And that's what this Mishnah says, V'amidu talmidim harbe, establish many students. If you want the Jewish world to survive, we need to have learning that comes along with it, so that we can. And then the final thing is v'asiu sag l'Torah, make a fence around the Torah. We need mitzvahs. We need good deeds. We can't just only be in the space of learning. What we really need is also the space of action to make the world into a better place. And mitzvahs, which is through mitzvahs of kindness, mitzvahs of Shabbos, of charity, mitzvahs of not speaking Lashon Hara, mitzvahs of Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, mitzvahs of tefillin and mezuzah and kosher, and mitzvahs of kindness and compassion. All of these are mitzvahs. The essence of what it is to be a Jew is about mitzvahs. And so I think also that's been what's so beautiful about this whole year. It's been a year of mitzvahs in Eric's honor, whether it was kindness to the power of 10, or it's been about the various initiatives that organizations and individuals have taken upon themselves and that continue. It is about the power of good deeds, because Torah learning helps us get our philosophy right, our perspectives, our understanding of the world, but together with the thinking and the ideas, we need action. Action is something which is so important. And so the three-pronged approach, justice, education, and action, are the ways of reviving and bringing energy to Jewish life. But these three principles, which they gave and apply equally in our times. And if we think about it, we need to ensure that Jewish communities around the world and the state of Israel itself be based on justice, on fairness, on ethics, on decency, principles again which Eric lived by: ethics, decency, fairness, doing everything in accordance with the law, and not only with the law but in accordance with ethics. We need Jewish education to be promoted in the Jewish world, and then of course mitzvahs. So it is justice, it is education and learning, and it is action and deeds. That is the blueprint, for what the people of the Great Assembly gave to the Jewish world at that time, and it also then provides us with a blueprint for what we need for our times. But it also applies to us not just as a national society of Jews. It also applies to us as individuals. And this is the very important thing in the context of this is the important thing in the context of learning Pirkei Avot. It has many great lessons for us, Pirkei Avot, in terms of Jewish community and the global Jewish community and the state of Israel and world Jewry. But it also has very powerful messages for us when it comes to to our own lives. And if we think about these three teachings in the Mishnah, it has a message for us, and this is what the Tiferet Yisrael says in his commentary on Pirkei Avot. If you look at each one of these three statements, Hevu metunim medin, be patient in judgment, va'amidu talmidim harbe, establish many students, ve'asiu sag l'Torah, and make a fence around the Torah, they apply not only to us as a community, but also to individuals. Because what does it mean to be patient in judgment? It means, he says, we're making judgments all the time, even if we are not a dayan, a judge sitting in a court, or a person, arbitrating in a complex communal matter. Every one of us is making judgments and decisions every moment of our lives. And in order to do that, we need to be able to make those judgments, and we need to be able to understand things, make decisions, interpret situations, interpret people with patience. Patience means not rushing to make decisions, not rushing into situations, but doing it with a sense of presence of mind, without panic, with a real sense of understanding and pausing to think. That we live in a world in which we are getting bombarded with information every waking moment, and then even possibly in our sleeping moments. We're living in a world where the companies that seek to bring information want to create a metaverse where the information and that sense of a reality absorbs every moment of who we are and our lives. And so how do we get a clarity in a world like this? We need time to think. We need a moment to distill our thoughts. We need to not live life in a sense of rush and panic, but in a sense of tranquility and peace of mind. And there are many mitzvahs that help us do that. Shabbos, for example, is a mitzvah that helps us to get tranquility and peace of mind. Our phones are shut. Our car keys are laid aside. We have a moment to just to be, to think, to be still. When we're learning Torah, our minds are still. We have an opportunity to absorb the wisdom of Hashem. When we are praying, when we're davening, we have a moment to be still. We need these moments of silence and stillness in our lives so that we can truly think, absorb wisdom, become better people. When we're constantly on the move, we do not have the ability to process all of the information, and we do not have the ability then to live with wisdom. Stillness and patience is the key to wisdom, and that's part of the first lesson here when it says, be patient in judgment, make time to think, be still, and receive wisdom. That's number one. Number two is ha'amidu talmidim harbe, receive many, establish many students. And what that means is to establish many students. The Tiferet Yisrael says that doesn't mean only people who are official teachers, like rabbis and school teachers. He says that is incumbent upon every single one of us. Any Torah idea of wisdom that you learn, share with somebody else. Whatever we've learned tonight, find somebody to share it. We need to all be spreading wisdom to our friends, to our spouses, to our children, to our work colleagues, to everyone we encounter. We need to have the real sense of teaching and imparting wisdom and sharing wisdom. That is what it means, ha'amidu talmidim harbe, to establish many students. It's not just for the official. We all have that responsibility, because you know what's so interesting about the mitzvah of learning Torah? It's lilmod ululamed, to learn and to teach. And that applies to everybody. You don't have to be an official, obviously an officially qualified person to teach. Obviously, we need to teach within integrity and only share and teach with things that we know and that we have learned about. But once you've learned something, then teach it. If you've learned Aleph, teach Aleph. If you've learned Beis, teach Beis. If you've learned a Mishnah and Pirkei Avot, teach that. If you've heard an idea on the parasha, share it at your Shabbos table. Share wisdom. If you're sitting at work over the lunch table and you found an interesting thing on the parasha, share it. If you are talking to a friend, to a loved one, any situation, our Shabbos table should be the perfect opportunity for everybody to share some words of wisdom, words of Torah at the table, so that the wisdom is not something which is only stuck in books and at set times of shiurim, but it permeates every part of our lives. And so that's the second lesson here. The third lesson is ve'asiu siag l'Torah, make a fence around the Torah, which means in our own lives we need to go out of our way to protect our mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are vulnerable because they can, we are committed to doing them, but we need to really to ensure that we have an environment that we set up in our homes and in our lives, so that it makes an environment which is conducive to the keeping of mitzvahs. And that means being proactive, to have a look at it. We have many halachas which teach about the importance of how to maintain our ethical standards. The laws of, for example, that a man and a woman cannot be in yichud. Yichud means for a man and woman who are not married to one another to be in a room which is locked away from other people, that other people do not have access to, or they cannot see in or enter. Then one needs to create an environment which is conducive to modesty, to respect, to respecting of boundaries, to all of that. A person from an ethical point of view as well, from a financial point of view, you need to appoint a financial advisor, tax advisor, who is going to help you to be good and ethical, not be encouraging in the other directions. It's all about proactively creating an environment that is conducive to ethical good conduct in all dimensions of our lives. We have to protect our mitzvahs. If we want to be a person who does mitzvahs. We need to be creating an environment in which it is easy to do the mitzvahs, and that we protect it and ensure that it is done in the best possible way. So these three statements of be patient in judgment, establish many students, and make a fence around the Torah can be read at two levels. One is the national level that says this is the blueprint for the Jewish future. The blueprint for the Jewish future is justice, Jewish education and Torah learning, and mitzvahs. That is the blueprint for the Jewish future. It is also a blueprint for our own personal lives, which is stillness and tranquility of spirit and thought and wisdom, principle number one. Principle number two, share wisdom, share all the Torah that you know, share light, make the world into a brighter, better place. And number three, create a safe environment that protects people's dignity, their rights, an environment which is conducive to mitzvahs. That is the third principle. So the Mishnah can be understood on these multiple levels. And so when looking back at this Mishnah, what we've learned together tonight is that Moshe kibel Torah Sinai, Moses received the Torah at Sinai, thereby establishing the chain of tradition that makes up Judaism, that makes us who we are, all the way back to Mount Sinai, generation to generation. And that is what we are celebrating tonight. We are celebrating the life and marking and paying tribute to a man who understood the principle of ledor, vador, from one generation to the next, ensuring that his values would continue. Eric Samson ensured that his values continued into his children and to his grandchildren, into making this world into a better place. And us being part of this, the learning of Pirkei Avot is about perpetuating the values of his legacy. And so when we look back at this Mishnah, it starts with the tradition, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai, passing down. Every generation, remember what we said, every generation has a different set of circumstances, of challenges that they face, and yet we have the constant, the Torah, which is there to hold us together. We have challenges in our times, and those challenges are met with the threefold blueprint of the men of the Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset HaGadolah, that gave us a national blueprint for the Jewish people, but also a personal blueprint. The national blueprint is justice, education, mitzvahs, and the personal blueprint is thoughtfulness, mindfulness, wisdom, together with sharing of wisdom and creating safe environments conducive to ethical conduct and protecting of our mitzvahs. That is what this Mishnah is in synopsis. So it's been such an honor for me to begin this learning program of Pirkei Avot, to share the first Mishnah of the 18 Mishnahs of Pirkei Avot, of chapter 1 of Pirkei Avot, and so I invite you to go onto the foundation website and to have a look at the program. Maybe if someone can just type into the chat the foundation website address, so that everyone has got it there on record, and that you can go onto the foundation website. You'll see the full program of 18 shiurim. If you miss a live shiur, well, all of the shiurim are going to be recorded, and you'll be able to catch up the recording. Let's learn these 18 Mishnahs in honor of Eric Samson. But let's do one thing more, because what Eric would want us to do is not just learn the Mishnahs, but live the Mishnahs, because that's what he did. His life was an eloquent shiur of Pirkei Avot. It was, because you can learn Pirkei Avot by going through the words, and we can speak the words, and that's an important step. But actually, even more important than learning the words is living the words of Pirkei Avot. So there, you can see in the chat line is being put the address where to find the Pirkei Avot program, and you can go on there, find all of the 18 shiurim. They're all going to be loaded up, the recordings, and let's all participate. This is something which is so special. So I want to thank everybody for participating. If anybody wants to put a question into the chat line, I'm happy to look. I do want to bring this shiur to a close, so that because I think there's another shiur which is starting very shortly. Rabbi Larry Shane is giving a shiur on the next Mishnah, and so I want to thank you all for participating and being part of it, and for this learning. It's been such an honor to participate, and we wish long life. We wish long life to Sheila, to your whole family, and know that we are all so honored to participate in continuing this remarkable legacy of Eric Samson. So may Eric's memory be a blessing. Let's continue to learn Pirkei Avot together, to live Pirkei Avot together, and God bless you all, and thank you so much for attending and being part of it.
Yeah.